And welcome back to another episode of Civil Discord. I am one of your hosts here, not as often as he should, in the People's Republic of Texas, Maurice Jones. And with me, as always, here more so than I am, out there in the People's Republic of California. Woo! Say that 5 times fast. The Supreme Overlord of Liberty, Amanda. Amanda, how's it going today?
It's going great. We have a video element now to our podcast that people can watch us on the YouTubes. So because of that, my publicist recommended, I'm my publicist, but my publicist recommended that I display prominently these 2 books that I definitely wrote. The first is called I Wrote This Book, Words by Me, Volume 1. The second is I also wrote this book, Words by Me, Volume 2. And you'll see that it's definitely legit because at the bottom it says second edition.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, these are 2 books that I have advanced copies. They're not available on Amazon yet.
So advanced copies, go ahead, order them directly from us, whether that's via Twitter or Instagram or whatnot. Just reach out to us. Let us know. We will send you copies in the mail on the 5th of probably never. Just throwing that out there, though, whatever you guys are wanting to do. Just make sure you hit us up. But yes, we are adding more elements again. As we stated last week, the past couple of weeks, actually, past couple of episodes, we are just super excited about what is coming with with Civil Discord. We're continuing to grow as a podcast. We're excited to have people joining us and moving things over. If I can move my cursor over as I should, there we go. But we're just super excited. We may be changing platforms as far as how we record and whatnot, just to make sure our video element is better. I am getting better internet sometime in the next few months. Hopefully, not sure exactly when that's going to happen, but I will have better internet. So I'll be on almost every single episode because my internet will not be going in and out because I will be getting past this whole Sparklight, New Wave, whatever they are. I'm just going to say this. If you guys ever decide to move out to anywhere as far as where I'm located, there is slowly more people are coming to the market. So we're getting Xfinity. But there's only one real cable provider in this entire county area. I'm not going to say this entire county, but in our local zip code within 4 zip codes. And it is New Wave Sparklight. And they are utter trash. Like, they're horrible. They're the prime example of what happens when you live in an area where somebody has a monopoly because they are not forced to get better. They're not forced to update anything. They're super expensive. I think I pay like $80 a month for, I think it's 300 total gigs of data. And I when I was in Tennessee and I was able to get 5 different providers, I was paying $40 a month for unlimited data. So it just shows you what happens when you're in a specific area and people say free markets don't work. But I argue against that pretty much so. But enough about all the monopolies and so forth that are being broken up by the free market here in Angleton, Texas. Sorry. There's some more Joe Rogan controversy. And I know we talked about him, discussed some things as far as him being removed from Spotify last week. Him having people wanting to have him removed from Spotify last week. And we discussed Neil Young and now another artist, India Ari, who I actually do know. And I do listen to her music. And she's a great artist. I love her to death. She's a very positive artist. Love all her work. But she's threatening to remove her music as well too if she owns it. I'm not sure that she actually owns it because of when she came out and all the deals and stuff were out. But nonetheless, she's threatened to remove her stuff out there for, in the beginning, was misinformation is why she was threatening to remove her things from Spotify. Then from that, it moved to, well, Spotify doesn't pay me enough off of my streams, but they're paying Joe Rogan $100 million over these next 7 years or so forth. And then it turned into, well, Joe Rogan used the N-word with the hard R in multiple episodes throughout his podcast. And so now they got to take those down. So there's all kinds of things out there. But yes, Joe Rogan out there in his controversy as far as using the hard R, he's come out and apologized for it and so forth. But Joe Rogan's in hot water again. Amanda, what are your thoughts on this whole Joe Rogan fiasco, if that's what you want to call it?
Well, my first thought is that I'm hearing about so many podcasts that I never knew existed. And the only reason that I'm hearing about them is because they're withdrawing from Spotify in protest of Joe Rogan's comments. So what I thought we could do to get more publicity is we could withdraw our podcast from Spotify in protest of other artists withdrawing their podcast from Spotify in protest of Joe Rogan.
Yes.
I think that would help us.
Yes, we could boost our show even faster than our current rate. I'm 100% for that.
We could do that. So that was my first thought. But more about, the people. All this demonstrates to me, and I know that not everyone agrees with me on this, but this just demonstrates how there is never a need for you, if you are not Black, to say the N-word. There is just not. It's not worth the cost. I can't think of even if you're using it as an example, even if you're, which Joe Rogan was doing in this clip stream where it's just him doing it after the other, there's just no need for you to do it ever. I'm so square on this that when I listen to music in my car, I don't say it. Like when I sing along in my car, I still don't, just because I'm like, I just don't.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. There's never any need. And it's not, obviously, I think that this is overblown, and that as we've seen, people are now coming out and jumping on Joe Rogan and saying, he's racist and such and such. And then in response, other people online are pulling up clips of the people who are condemning Joe Rogan saying things that are anti-trans, that are racist, that are misogynist, whatever. And it does demonstrate that you can play this game all the way back, and it doesn't really help anyone.
Yep.
But I'm interested to see what happens with this, because it is now, I think, more likely for Spotify to try and terminate their contract with Rogan, and just again because of the optics. But A, I don't think they're really able to do that legally. B, I go back to what I said in the last episode about value prop. They have absolutely no reason. People can only get Joe Rogan on Spotify. They can get India Arie on any other platform, even if every single major artist withdraws the music. You can get it on every other platform, and usually you do. But you go to Spotify for Joe Rogan and all the fringy, crazy podcasts. So, and people usually have multiple podcast apps too. So I still, I see him as pretty well insulated from this, and that's a testament to the utility and the benefit of having multiple platforms and multiple competitors in the space.
Right.
But again, there's no need ever to say that word. Just don't do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I caught some flack on the TikToks because, of course, I decided to troll because somebody who is on, he's more of like a sports commentator and so forth, and he was like, I want to hear your thoughts, and he posted a clip of Joe Rogan's apology, and he was like, what are your thoughts? Should we move on? Should we forget this? I commented this. I said, not sure why this matters in the world. Nonetheless, he shouldn't have apologized. Like, that's what I said. Because those are my legit thoughts. Like, I get, one, I think he shouldn't apologize for multiple reasons. One, this stuff happened a while back. So it's not like this was happened yesterday and so forth. To me, it's an empty apology because you're only apologizing because somebody called you out on it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't like apologies like that. So there's no need for it. Secondly, you're apologizing to appease people who apologies don't appease. Mm-hmm. Like you are apologizing to somebody or to people who will literally crucify you regardless of whether or not you come out and admit to it, because you'll say, hey, I'm sorry. So now they're saying, oh yeah, you realize that what you did was wrong. So we need to go even further or whatnot. And like you were saying earlier, it was okay. So they pulled those episodes down in which he's used that, but now it's like, oh well, he's got more episodes where he's speaking out against the LGBTQ plus community. So we need to take those down. He's got more episodes where he's talking about this, that, or so we need to take those down. And so whether or not we feel like an apology is a admission of guilt, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, you shouldn't have to apologize for that. And then thirdly, you didn't do anything. I mean, you said the N-word, but if we're really going to talk about context and what's being said, how many of those people who have actually gotten mad at Joe Rogan have gone back and listened to the clips in which he actually said it? Like he's talking. People who listen to our podcast probably know who Michael Malice is. He's talking to Michael Malice, and Michael Malice is like he's this Russian guy who is now in America, who's an anarcho-capitalist, and he doesn't like to term specific things, but if you had to term him in something, that's the group that he would be in. If we're being real, and they're discussing things in the context of which he's using the examples. Like he's not calling somebody a hard R or anything like that. It's not coming out in the racist term, and you're out here blaming these things. And so that was my thought process. That's been my whole thought process. And it's like, okay, whatever. This does not affect my daily life. So why does it matter to me for me to deviate from the platform in which I use to talk about it? And which is why I was frustrated with this guy on TikTok. It's like, you don't talk about these issues. You don't at all. So why all of a sudden now are you trying to bait people into coming to view your channel because of this Joe Rogan thing? Like you're just trying to hop on the bandwagon and so forth. And he calls himself sports fluid. And I was like, well, let's talk about it. Let's be more fluid in this conversation if you really want to talk about it. So I was frustrated, but I made that. Somebody responded, of course, not knowing that I am a person of color, that I am legit black, and that whether I use the word or not, I'm allowed to use the word. Okay. Not sure if everybody out there knows, black people are allowed to say the N-word. I don't use it. I don't say it because of where it's derived from and so forth and all these things. And as far as now where the word has truly been derived from, I will use that term, but that's negus. Like that's completely different. That is form of royalty and kings and queens. Like that's what that is. Not the NI part. So I don't use that, but I got called, hey, somebody said, hey, we found a supremacist here, because I feel like he didn't need to apologize. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that I was a supremacist here. Maybe I'm for black supremacy, I guess. Maybe you're not aware of that. Like, okay, you know what? I am for bettering black people. You're right, 100%. And then somebody said that that I needed to educate myself and that they wouldn't expect a hick person like me to understand #BLM. And I was just like, oh, okay. I guess my life matters too. Yes, you're right. My life does matter. And I was like, and of course, I'm in my trolling phase. So I just put laughing emojis. And I'm like, because what you're saying means absolutely nothing. You're not throwing out any points as to why he should apologize and so forth. You're attacking me because I've got a picture of our podcast and my handle is straight and capping. Like, let's be real. So you have no idea what I'm talking about. And it's like, oh yeah, and then somebody, and then he responded, well, I'm glad that I could educate your remedial self. Well, now he didn't use self; he used some different words that I don't use, and so forth. And I'm just like, all right, dude. Again, laughing emojis, ha 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 ha. Don't think you're not getting any sort of thing. I mean, didn't know that I was a supremacist. Didn't know that I was remedial. I didn't know that you had to be remedial in order to read all these books that I like to read about things. I don't know. I guess my ACT scores and my master's degrees and stuff show me that I'm remedial. I guess I am. I don't know. But it's this trolling phase. Like, whatever, guys. You know, this is stuff that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Joe Rogan is still going to be rich. I'm still going to enjoy listening to him because he has a great podcast. He's a great MMA commentator. He brings on voices that he disagrees with. He brings on voices that he agrees with, talks about anybody and everybody else. So I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, this is nothing but water off my back that I just move forward and say, oh, okay, Joe Rogan, keep doing what you're doing, man. Just don't use the N-word and all is good.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I'm thinking now. It's good that we both have plausible deniability about the various things that we say under the banner of civil discord. But I'm only imagining like getting pegged for some of your comments on Instagram. Like I get nominated for some Senate, for some presidential position. I'm at the Senate. They're pulling up all the Instagram posts. I've never seen this in my life, sir. I promise you, this is from my co-host. That would be hysterical. But
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
I think this is it's one of those things that people are gonna jump onto. They're gonna latch onto, and in the last analysis, you can play this game for every single person. I know somebody did a mashup with the Young Turks where it's essentially exactly the same thing. Where it's and again they're using it. They're using the hard R, and they're using it to talk about either they're quoting people or they're using it as an example of slurs. So you can do this all day. I don't know why you want to, but you can.
We'll be here all day, and it is what it is. But speaking of being here all day, waiting in line, doing all kinds of things, this truck convoy again that we talked about last week has done nothing but grow and grow and grow. And GoFundMe came out and said, "Hey, because that is how these truckers started. There was about 3 or 4 of them, and so forth. They actually spoke to some people at Blaze Media. Started about 4 or 5 of them, and it just grew and grew and grew. And so they raised over $10 million to support themselves while they're pretty much going on strike via GoFundMe. And GoFundMe cut it off because it said that at first it was like, hey, we're looking into this, and if this doesn't fit our things, we're going to stop the funding of this. And then they said they had some police in the area say, oh, well, there's some violence surrounding this. And so that was their way of saying, okay, hey, we got to stop it because there's violence surrounding this. Although they didn't stop any of the BLM stuff when all the violence was happening 2 years ago. But hey, it is what it is. So they cut it off, but they said in their original statement, they said that they were going to find, because they had raised all this money, they were going to find charities that they deemed worthy of receiving this money, not giving the people their money back. No, they said they were going to take that money, which was deemed to go towards this cause, towards this specific charity, and they said, no, it's going to go to something else. Well, of course, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Go fraud me. But of course, they caught a lot of flack from them. I'm talking like people calling, sending in emails, all kinds of things, people reporting them, and they had to put out another statement saying, hey, after careful deliberation, we decided to actually refund everybody's money. They literally said, no need for you guys to report this or send any more emails or requests or anything like that. We're going to give you your money back. So quite interesting turn of events with GoFundMe and so forth. But nonetheless, this trucking convoy is still trucking along, pun intended, with what their intentions are. I mean, because if there's not one platform, another platform is going to come up and for the money. And I know of one specific organization that I support on a regular basis, Black Guns Matter. They have said we're no longer going to use GoFundMe because of what they're doing with this trucker convoy. So I think GoFundMe is actually going to hurt themselves in the long run when it comes to things like this. But Amanda, your thoughts on this whole trucker convoy, everything that's going on with that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to point out the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, the workers have seized the means of production. They are driving across the winterlands of Mother Canada, and they are coming to Parliament Hill, and we are ignoring the fact that there has been an uprising. Yeah, so you have the workers just seize the means of production. You had everything that you would typically look for in a proletarian style revolution, right? You have the truckers rising up and refusing to work, and no. When I said workers of the world unite, I meant unite under the state. That's what I meant. I meant
yes.
Yeah. So there's that. I want people to make that palpably clear because it tickles me so much. A few things. So yes, GoFundMe did remove this convoy from their platform at the request of the police, and the police even tweeted out a thank you, which I don't think helped anyone in that situation. You had people posting Mitchell and Webb gifs where David Mitchell is saying, "Oh, we the baddies." So yeah, yes, you are the baddies. At the same time, the trucker convoy was rerouted. I'll see what I did there. Rerouted to Give, Send, Go. Give, Send, Go has been under a denial of service attack since then. And so it's very touch and go in terms of getting donations. But one of the reasons that GoFundMe was so quick to change their policy on donating to alternative charities versus refunding is that every time a user or a donor contacts their bank and asks for a refund, that charges $15 to GoFundMe. So they were getting their butts kicked in that regard. At the same time, there have also been truckers in the U.S. trying to organize their own protest and route to Capitol Hill, which looks very interesting. I'm following that. I'm watching for developments on that. Their Facebook group was kicked off of Facebook, and they have moved to other platforms. They've moved to Getter. They've moved to Discord, what have you. So I just want to say now, for the record, if this DC trucker convoy is successful, and I mean, insofar as it happens, I don't want to hear any more about how Facebook is a public utility, because these people were removed from Facebook and they are still managing to organize themselves. All right. Yep. So no more talk about regulating Facebook as a public utility. We're done with that conversation. All right, comrades. So yeah, with that said, it's interesting how little this is being covered in other facets of the press. If you break things down versus very online people versus people who mostly get their news from, the local paper or national corporate press, there's not a lot of reporting on this. I can only imagine why. That said, this is a protest. This is a protest, and people have the right to petition their government. Well, in the U.S., you have the right to petition your government for redress of grievances. Canada is a little bit fuzzier on what they allow their people to do. But again, this is a worker uprising. This is the worker uprising you wanted. And you know what? Exactly. I support it too, because I support workers getting what they, I support people's right to fight for the benefits that they want. And, obviously there's some disagreement on means there, but I think this is fantastic. Power to the people.
For sure. And I a couple of points from at least from my standpoint. One, as far as this U.S. convoy, I will be honest, I wish that they would go to specific states and not necessarily to DC, just because the states are the real corporate the real aggressors here.
You're right.
Especially when you have specific presidents saying, "Hey, I'm gonna leave it up to the states," and so forth, this, that, or the other, which is fine. So I want them to attack Sacramento. I want them to attack. Austin, Texas is not really shut down, but go to their capitals as far as in Maryland and in New York City and all of those areas, because those are the areas that are truly affecting people's lives. And then you will truly see how the backbone of the supply chain is their truckers. Is the backbone is truckers. Let's be real. And I think that is what Canada is starting to realize. and why Justin Trudeau decided to actually leave and go into hiding. But the other point I want to bring up is it's so crazy how people always expect some sort of political change to happen when people are actively participating in politics, as opposed to doing something else to shift the culture as far as things go. So, excuse me. So instead of they saying, "Oh, hey, you got to vote. We got to vote these morons out," and so forth, these truckers are saying, "No, we're not voting anybody out. We're going to do something different.
We're not going
Exactly. We're going to change our culture within trucking and say, hey guys, we're going to work together. Let's do this. Let's impact our culture, because it's not a necessarily a political thing. It's a, hey, stop trying to force me to get something that I don't want to get." Like that's what they're really doing. And I love that. I think it's a great thing. I think it goes to show that voting is not the only way to change people's minds, and that a legit real protest. And I'm not knocking people who want to get in the streets and march. I'm not at all. Okay. I'm saying that does absolutely nothing. That's what I'm saying. So even when you talk about stuff that was happening in, unless you were literally going to blockade and have people, and like, when I say blockade, I don't mean police are setting up areas because you're requesting to go protest, and so they knowing what you're going and explaining time. I mean, like, no, you were literally got thousands of people in the middle of the road. You were halting traffic. You were literally in the middle of the road. Like that is effective type of protesting, and that is what they are doing in Canada. And so these are things that you can actually do to force change in your government, to change the culture, because you will see people who are rising up to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. The buck stops here. The buck stops with me, and then we can move forward however I see fit, not however you see fit as a government, and so forth. So I like that. Canada truckers, keep doing what you're doing. Joe Rogan, keep doing what you're doing. Truckers in the United States, keep doing what you're doing, except for make sure you go to states and not just DC, and I will support you 100%. As a libertarian, there are a lot of people who I know that are truckers. Yeah. They have their own podcast. I run in a lot of circles with a lot of them. I run into in circles with a lot of them, and they are saying the same things that I'm saying. As a matter of fact, I'm stealing a lot of their ideas as far as not going to DC, going to specific cities, because the states are the ones who are actually being the aggressors as far as all these lockdowns and mandates and things are concerned, outside of this federal mandate that Joe Biden has on healthcare workers.
Yeah, so, which again doesn't affect the truckers. In Canada, it does, because there is a mandate that says, to get in and out of the country, you either have to be vaccinated or you need to quarantine for 2 weeks. A lot of these truckers, by the way, it's worth pointing out, are vaccinated. Yep. And we don't recognize that in many places, the norm is to be pro-vaccine, anti-mandate. That is the norm. And these truckers, a lot of them are no different. And yeah, I think you bring up a good point with the need to concentrate these things in states. First of all, it's easier to organize. It's also easier, just in terms of logistics, and it actually can make an impact. But yeah, so it's more than just clogging up the streets, right? Because these people are holding up the supply chain. That's why there's pressure on the government, and provinces in Canada have changed some of their restrictions. They've removed for certain taxes that they're imposing on people who are not vaccinated. So I attribute this not just to people being in the streets, but people who are, holding up the supply chain.
Right.
So, might get worse before it gets better. But it's an interesting one to follow for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Now, there's something coming out of California, your great state, the People's Republic of California, that is getting ready to host a Super Bowl in spite of all the COVID mandates, which is so surprising because I'm almost positive the NFL is not going to show a bunch of people in masks.
No, but they're going to make them hold their breath while they play, and then also hold masks in their left hand. Because this is what Gavin with the good hair did. This is what Eric Garcetti did, and they both worked. Give them credit for that. Yeah.
So what is happening or what is not happening in California?
Well, in California, so the Super Bowl, I guess, is still happening. I assume many people heard about the debacle with Gavin with the good hair being caught multiple times without a mask on, and he said, well, I was very judicious. I had my mask, as you see, I have a mask in my left hand, and there's this picture of him with this crap-eating grin on his face, not drinking any water, not posing for any pictures, just watching the game with the. And he's got his mask nowhere. Actually, it is hanging in his hand. And then Eric Garcetti says that he held his breath while he was taking a picture with Magic Johnson, which is special. There is
smiling,
grinning. There is a positive development though that's come out of California, which is the fact that California had proposed a single payer health system, which that is a misnomer that I find very irksome because it's not single payer. It's the taxpayers pay for it. It's everyone pays. That's the point. Right. And everyone would pay to such an extent that it would double state taxes. It would double 100% more just to fund what I call shitty cheese sandwich healthcare. Now, the reason that I call it shitty cheese sandwich healthcare goes back to when I was in elementary school. This is a different elementary school story. When you didn't have lunch money, what you had to do was you had to get what was called a biteable. Okay, and the biteable consisted of 6 bread triangle slices. Allegedly, they were kind of spongy, and then these cardboard-esque cheese rectangles, and that was your biteable, and that was to provide lunch for people who didn't have lunch money. And there was this great stigma, this great shame about having to go back. It was awful, having to go back and grab the biteable. But the point is that when people are debating about universal health care or a single payer system, right, where you sort of obliterate the private market, people often talk about affordable, quality health care. Mm-hmm. I want everyone to have affordable, quality health care too. I don't think that a state system, a taxpayer-funded system, is the way to get there. First of all, because it's not affordable. Okay, I would be paying more for this than I would be paying for a private plan. That's the first thing. Right. The second thing is that it's not quality. It is shitty cheese sandwich healthcare. It is. In order to cut costs, it is the lowest quality type of plan. It is rationed. It is not tasteful. It is not, it's not individualized. So these are not solutions that are sustainable for any individual. They're not cost effective. Again, I would be paying more. I would be paying more for this plan than I would be if I were to go on the private market and get a new healthcare plan. And I would be getting a better healthcare plan. I would be getting more perks. So I was happy to see this bill not pass ultimately, although my hopes are not particularly high for the overall future in terms of, I feel like if any state is going to try to experiment with a single payer system, which granted, they can, they're laboratories of democracy, right? I just want to be long gone. I want to be long out of the state when that happens. So, give it a little bit of time at least.
When I was reading the story and I saw it in there, I was just like, of all states to like for this to kind of fail, you would imagine that California would be the last ones for this to actually work. I mean, because and one, because it's pretty much Democrat. Democrats run the state, which I mean, I don't care whether you're red or you're blue in that sense, but Democrats mainly run the state. And so you would assume by the way that people are being, the way that the media portrays Democrats, that most of them would be on board. I feel like this is a win because you realize that not all Democrats are crazy. Mm-hmm. Not all Democrats are crazy leftists who believe in some crazy universal health care that is going to double the taxes of people in their state. Like, California is already an expensive state to live in. They already take, and I don't know, you have the federal income tax, and then you have to pay the federal taxes, and then you have to pay your state income tax, which I don't know what percentage that is. I mean, but it's more money than what Texas takes out of my check, which is zero. And so just doing all that, and then for them to say, like, look, okay, we can't double this. I mean, I think the article that I read, it said they spend nearly their budget, or they typically they're on track to spend like $517 billion. So, and this alone would cost over $300 billion. So more than half of what you're already spending. You would come up with a budget that's close to $1 trillion a year as far as how you're spending. That's a lot of money, people. I know I've said this before, and I'll say this again. I'm teaching. I teach my class. I tell my classes all the time. I've been teaching to them. I have barely lived 1 billion seconds. Okay, 1 billion seconds. 1 billion is 32 over 32 years. So I've lived over 32 years of my life on this earth. 1 trillion seconds. It takes you over 31,000 years to live 1 trillion seconds. It's closer to 31,783 years. Like, if you put when you put that into context, like that's a lot of money to be spending for a state. Now, granted, California has one of the largest economies in the world. Like I'm not saying that they can't afford those things or whatnot.
Oh, they can't.
Spending $1 trillion, like they literally can't. They're $1 trillion. That's a lot of money to be adding another $300 billion to your budget is ridiculous. And I'm glad that this didn't make it to the assembly. That I'm glad that he realized he didn't have the 41 votes that he needed to make this happen. It was great. It was great. I love it. Thank you, California. One of the few times where I can say thank you, California, for not being California. Like, I appreciate it. No offense to those out there in the People's Republic of California.
No, it's fine. I'm trying to put an exodus over here, quite frankly. Trying to escape.
Darn enough U-Hauls.
Yeah,
U-Hauls are too expensive to move out.
Gotta wait for a little bit to get those U-Hauls back. No, California is the other thing that's hysterical. California was uniquely horrible at their COVID health response. So yes. The idea that was a perfect example, a microcosm that became a huge macro catastrophe. It was a microcosm of what you could expect if the state of California took the reins on every aspect of healthcare, right? And you wouldn't do this. I mean, California was ranked almost last in the nation for weeks on end in terms of vaccine rollout, even though they had a year to get this infrastructure in place. California is notorious for for botching various spending programs and having it go to fraudsters and people who are not deserving of various types of state aid. You wouldn't do this for anything else. And this is a larger point about single payer, or taxpayer funded healthcare. You wouldn't think about doing this for a grocery store, right? I mean, like, imagine being told you can only go to a certain grocery store and you can only spend a certain amount of money on a certain type of food. You wouldn't do this for anything else. Why on earth would you do it with the most critical thing for people and the most individualized thing for people, which is their health care?
Makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's this concept of hey, it's that sunk cost fallacy, or the gambler's fallacy of, hey, I'm already in. something's got to change. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. Something's got to change. Something's got to change. Something's got to change. I mean, and it is for some reason. I mean, people just it is just, man, I don't get it. And which takes us into the last thing that I think we really want to hone in and spend some time on, because we want to talk about. Amanda has it in the notes. It's COVID policy versus a reality check. And as soon as I read that, I was like, yes, because I completely forgot about this study that just came out. And so just came out by and it was out by Johns Hopkins. Okay, so the same study that the same people, the same scholars, the same experts that everybody likes to refer back to when COVID first came out. These were the same experts that talked about 2 weeks to slow the spread, and this is everything we have to do. They didn't use that specific scaling model as far as potential deaths or whatnot. But these are the people who everybody claims are the experts. Okay, now you guys will bear with me because I'm going to read this. I'm just going to read the abstract of this study, and then we'll talk about it. So it says that, so this is the abstract. For those of you who don't know what an abstract is, I'm not trying to say that you were dumb or anything like that. I just want to make sure that all listeners are aware of what an abstract is. An abstract is pretty much just a summary of the study. It is at the very beginning. So instead of you reading, I think this is 62 pages. So instead of you having to go through and read 62 pages, it will summarize how what the findings actually were. And then when you go through and you actually read the study, you can see how they came to these specific findings and so forth. So let me read through this really quick. It says, this systematic review and meta-analysis are designed to determine whether there is empirical evidence to support the belief that lockdowns reduce COVID-19 mortality. So do lockdowns actually reduce the rates of people dying from COVID-19? Lockdowns are defined as the imposition of at least one compulsory non-pharmaceutical intervention, which they term as NPI. NPIs are government mandates that directly restrict people's possibilities, such as the policies that limit internal movement, close schools and businesses, and ban international travel. This study employed a systematic search and screening procedure in which 18,509 studies are identified that could potentially address the belief posed. After 3 levels of screening, 34 studies ultimately qualified. Of those 34 eligible studies, 24 qualified for inclusion in the meta-analysis. They were separated into 3 groups: lockdown stringency index studies, shelter-in-place studies, and then specific NPI studies. An analysis of each of these 3 groups support the conclusion that lockdowns had little to no effect on COVID mortality. Little to no effect. For those of us who like statistics, that what this is saying is lockdowns had a statistically insignificant effect on COVID-19 mortality. Okay. More specifically, stringency index studies find that lockdowns in Europe and the United States only reduced COVID-19 mortality by 0.2% on average. Again, statistically insignificant. 0.2% on average. SIPOs were also ineffective, only reducing the COVID mortality by 2.9% on average. Again, SIPOs was a shelter-in-place orders. And then specific NPI studies also found no broad-based evidence of noticeable effects on COVID-19 mortality. While this meta-analysis concluded that lockdowns had little to no public health effects, they have imposed enormous economic and social costs where they have been adopted. I'm going to read that again, okay? While this meta-analysis concludes that lockdowns have had little to no public health effects, they have imposed enormous economic and social costs where they have been adopted. In consequence, lockdown policies are ill-founded and should be rejected as a pandemic policy instrument from Johns Hopkins University. Johns Hopkins Institute for Applied Economics, Global Health, and the Study of Business Enterprise. Whew, goodness, y'all better preach.
And Johns Hopkins getting real based right now. I mean, because they're also really are. They're the people who are behind the studies that were showing, that we talked about last week, that talk about natural immunity being effective for as long as we've been studying natural immunity, ladies and gentlemen. They're the people who have been doing these studies as well. And so, yeah, Johns Hopkins is coming out and producing these studies that I think a lot of people have been discussing this for a long time, but it's worth pointing out. And it's also worth pointing out, I was looking at some numbers because over the past couple of weeks, I haven't heard much about COVID deaths. I mean, I've heard talking points, but I haven't heard any new screaming and wailing and gnashing of teeth, which is really what I'm all about. So I wanted to look at some data because I had a hunch. Now, back at the start of all of this, people were comparing SARS-CoV-2 with the flu, which was stupid in terms of death rates because COVID deaths, at least deaths with COVID, and I think probably if you looked at deaths from COVID too, were higher than flu deaths. So that was kind of dumb. The one similarity, however, is that both are coronaviruses, right? So we do have some kind of inbred natural immunity, or rather natural immune response to both the flu and COVID and any other coronavirus. Doesn't mean it's not deadly. However, I was looking at some data just today, and COVID is now, at this point, as deadly as the flu. So I found a couple different studies. One was in the Telegraph, and one was in the, that was in the Mail. And both of them place COVID kind of in the middle of what we would tend to expect from an average flu season. This should not be surprising because at this point, almost everyone has been either vaccinated for COVID or had COVID or both. So even when we have new variants, as we've found, both vaccines and natural immunity hold up really well in terms of reducing severity. Just like you can get the flu multiple years because you're going to get a different strain. Your body does have that innate response. And so the rate at which people tend to die from the flu is really, really low. Now, the one difference is that COVID has always been less deadly to children than the flu. So I was looking at some statistics in terms of COVID infection fatality rate per age group. For children, basically, for children up to 18, it is so minuscule that we can barely measure it. For ages 1 to 4, we're talking 81 in 1 million. So it's 0.00081% infection fatality rate. And again, we don't know whether these are measured as deaths with or deaths of. For ages 5 to 14, 0.00.
Hold up.
Yeah.
You said 81 in 1 million.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm just an IFR of 81 in 1 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's just 1 to 4. So ages 5 to 14, 0.0011%. Ages 15 to 24, 0.0048%. And these are infection fatality rates. And again, I'm not sure whether they're looking at with versus of. Ages 25 to 44, that me, all right? So I am between the ages of 25 and 44.
Me too.
That would be 0.031%. Ages 45 to 64, 0.18%. Ages 65 to 74, 0.82%. Ages 75 plus, which is where you get to about the life expectancy, the average life expectancy. When you go close to or above the average life expectancy, then you start to see 3.1% infection fatality rate. So obviously, this is much, much deadlier and that's over the course, the entire course of COVID-19. Obviously, this is much deadlier for older people than it is for younger people. Unlike the flu, which is kind of where you see this U-shaped curve, right? And also older people, though, are not generally the people who are working. Older people 75 plus are generally not people who are in elementary schools or teaching in elementary schools. And again, this measures infection fatality rate over the entire course of COVID-19. So this includes infection fatality rate pre-vaccines. We also know that people who die from COVID at any age tend to have multiple comorbidities. So more than one. Obesity, diabetes, chronic lung disease, these types of things are, and for children, you'll hear that pretty much every child who's died has had a comorbidity. So that's kind of where we are. And my state has chosen to make school children wear N95s for 6 hours.
Ain't no way.
Yeah, I have thoughts about that. But I mean, you think about this. This is mad government energy where you tell kids, or you tell parents of kids, for 2 years, the kids have got to be in masks, and a cloth mask is going to work. And so a lot of kids are going to be in cloth masks. Okay. And then a study comes out and they say, hey, what's up? So cloth masks have never actually worked. Sorry about that. But even while that is true, children have been statistically unaffected by the virus itself. Statistically unaffected. Now, the response to that has not been, oh, wow, well, I guess they spent 2 years wearing these ineffective masks and still didn't die or even get hugely sick. Let's maybe have them not wearing masks. Their response is instead, oh no, the masks don't work. Let's make them wear N95s instead. And at this point, it's kind of sickening. I've started saying that masks for kids, because they do have a soporific effect and they do kind of make kids more muted, just really tragic to me. Mm-hmm. It kind of feels like they're the new ADHD medication. It feels like let's get these kids to just sit down and calm down and not talk, and this is a way to do that.
Yeah.
So it's scary because I don't know. This is so far removed from any scientific validity at this point that I don't see schools backtracking from it without parents saying enough is enough.
Right. This is one of those, like, and I love saying it. I told you so moments. It is literally, I told you so moments. Between this Johns Hopkins study and us actually looking at the infection fatality rates of everybody, just kind of saying like, hey, if in the very beginning, when the world is exposed to something new, it's going to start off at a high rate of death, as what we would see, because we're only going based off of how many people we're testing versus the deaths. Like, that's what we're looking at. We're not understanding that how easily transmissible is this specific virus and so forth. Because if it's easily transmissible, and let's say we have 10 people in the room, 3 people die, like, oh my gosh, like it's high. Like, you would think like 3 or 5 people, because we've only tested those 5 people. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, no, all 10 people had it. You're like, okay, well, that's 30%. If you scale that out, 3 to 100, you only tested 25. Like, oh, 3 and 25 people die. Like, man, that's a lot. But it's just like, no, 3 and 1,000 people die because 1,000 people have had this. And so, which is what people were saying in the very beginning. And now we're like, no, you're crazy. What is it? Johnny, oh man, he's the guy out of Stanford. Johnny Anitas.
Johnny Anitas, yeah.
Yes, he was coming out with studies saying like, hey, more people have actually had this virus than we think. So this whole infection fatality rate is actually going to be lower than what you actually think it is because more people have had it and so forth. But people called you crazy way back when that study came out. People called us crazy way back when we said you cannot just turn off the economy. You are going to have a huge impact on the economy by just telling businesses they can't open. You're going to have people who are going to go into massive debt. You're going to have people who go into depressions. You're going to have businesses that do not open back up. Yelp came out with a study over a year ago that literally said, "Hey, people." I think it was like 50% of the businesses that were on Yelp were not going to make it through this. 50%. That is a lot of businesses. It's a lot of small businesses that were sitting there that were sitting there telling them they can't open up because of this. And then you have people who are saying, no, you still have to open up because it is my business. I know of a business that literally defied the lockdowns and so forth. And my wife and I were driving by the other day and I was like, hey, that's that bar that we went to, when they were ignoring all the mandates and this, that, and the other. It's like, what happened to them? She said they closed down. And I was like, that's a shame. That's sad because they could not survive because they had to shut down for 2 months. Now, granted, are there possibly some financial issues with that? You're running a risk of being in a restaurant because you have low margins. Like that is a risk that you're willing to take, but you're also not betting on the government saying you can't operate for 2 months. You're like those aren't things, those are outliers. And here we are again today. It is February of 2022 saying, I told you so. Like, people aren't going to recover from this, but yet they try to make me out to be a villain because, oh, you're not wearing your mask. You blah, 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 blah. You're not doing this. And I'm like, no, I was not the one advocating for people being locked in their homes. I was not the one advocating for you to shut businesses down, tell people, hey, they can't earn a living, and you're giving them here in the United States some levels of unemployment or whatnot, and I forgot what they called them. The
PPP ones?
No, not the PPP, but the $1,400 or $700 that we were getting.
Stimulus checks.
Yeah, your stimulus. You're not stimulating anything because businesses aren't open. Yes. And now we're feeling the effects of the helicopter money because all the prices and stuff are going up. And yet you look at me like I'm crazy because I'm telling you that this is exactly what's going to happen. You can call me Nostradamus Jones because I predicted this 2 years ago. I literally said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have an effective fatality rate that is going to be very low because of this what's going on. You're going to have inflation start to cause prices to go up, and then you're going to be mad because you're not making enough money. And then it's going to be proven that that the economy is not just some light switch that you can turn on and off. And now all of a sudden, it's like Maurice was right again. My wife will tell you this all the time. I am right 99% of the time. The other 1% of the time, I was mistaken. For being real, listen to people who are actually knowledgeable on things, and don't just listen to your experts who are fed to feed you lines to keep you happy. You're like being lions in cages. You're like being tigers in cages where people fear you, but they don't fear you because all we have to do is give it a slice of meat, and then we can go in there and be best friends, and you don't know how lethal you are because you're not like these truckers who are pulling up a freaking convoy in Canada saying enough is enough. You're not like these truckers in the U.S. who are saying, hey, enough is enough. We're going to protest. We're going to literally halt your supply chain until you literally do what we demand you to do. But no, you listen to your so-called experts. You listen to Fauci, who is the highest paid government official that we have. And it is ridiculous. You're listening to all these people who are feeding you these lines, these Brian Stelters of the world, and these Rachel Madcows, and all these Branch Covidians. You're listening to all these people who are literally giving you wrong information. And it's been 2 years now that they have been wrong over and over and over again, yet we're still listening to them. And I don't get it. It is so frustrating. I don't understand why I still see people walking around in cloth masks at a school. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, am I taking crazy pills here? I've got to be taking crazy pills because this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And this is where Amanda and I differ on one of the things. Amanda is very civil in these altercations. She is civil. She is, hey, I'm like, no, you're stupid, and I will continue to call you stupid because you called me that, whatever, and you do not care. I'm not going to let you survive any of this. I'm going to refer back to each and every time where you called me crazy and you said I didn't know what I was talking about. And now, time after time, study after study is coming out and saying, oh, Nostradamus Jones is right again. He called it. That's my new nickname, Nostradamus.
I dig it.
Sorry.
I dig it. No, I mean, like, we got Straight ANCAP and we got Notorious BLG, and now we have Nostradamus Jones. It's fantastic. I dig it.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, it is where we differ, and I think it's why we go well together.
Yes.
No, but I get angry too. I get, I think I've said before, I'm angry for myself. I'm sad for myself because I'm heartbroken for kids. I'm heartbroken for undergraduates. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, to what extent do I want to continue to implicitly, to what extent, does being in California, does remaining in certain institutions sanction this? And I think it's a difficult question that certainly I'm confronting. So
yeah. So, but hey, thank you so much, and thank you, Amanda, for listening to my rants.
I love it so much. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Civil Discord, where Amanda and I agree on a lot of things, and then we diverge at the very end and disagree on methods as far as how we should address people in our Discord or whatnot. Amanda thinks civilly. I think no, I don't let them live. I smell blood and I attack. So, but if you like us, please leave us a 5-star rating. On Apple Podcasts, 5-star rating review. We know we're worth every single one of those 5 stars because you get to listen to tirades. You get to listen to Amanda plug her books that you will get on the 5th of Never. If you want to go ahead and send us in that money, you can. You can hit me up on my Venmo. You can hit me up on Cash App, whatever you want to do.
We've enabled tips now on the Discord Twitter. So
hey. See? Leave us a tip. Yeah. You can do all of those things. But yes, leave us a 5-star rating review. Share the podcast, share the show wherever you are listening to this and potentially watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, share it on YouTube. Make sure you follow us and subscribe to us there as we continue to grow this show. Follow us on Instagram and on Twitter. I don't do anything on TikTok, so I just troll, but also Instagram at Civil Discord Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Civil Discord Pod. You follow Amanda on Twitter as Ajax the Griff. Follow me on Instagram, call me Maurice. Do all of that, and I promise you we'll be back again with another exciting episode of Civil Discord. Until then, y'all be easy.
Stay fierce.